comments. Any questions from sprint qualifying? Any comments to make ahead of the sprint race? Any questions about what we might see today? I think today will be really interesting because it'll give some good insight into what we might see during the race. I think the last time we had a sprint race here in Spa was in 2023. We did not have a sprint race here in Spa last year, so definitely a change for this year. Might give us some insight into the running order, the race pace of the teams leading into the race on Sunday. Oh, sounds like Gasly is having a water issue before the race, so not good. Not good for Gasly there. Hopefully they're able to fix whatever issue he might be having. Drop a comment in the chat if you have any questions, have any comments ahead of the race here, the sprint race. Just getting everything set up for the race here. Incredible. Haas. P5, P7, right? Really great sprint qualifying showing for them. Haas has been on the upswing a little bit here. Some good results lately. Carlos Sainz, P6 as well. Gasly in P8. If he can't get his car together, can't get his car ready for the sprint race, that would be really unfortunate for him. Liam Lawson with pretty decent P11. I think George Russell at P13, Kimi Antonelli at P20, all really unfortunate results. The news was that George Russell was possibly carrying some damage after Kimi Antonelli had gone off into the gravel and kicked all the gravel onto the track. Unfortunate for George Russell there for sure. I think there's definitely pace in that car, so he should be able to move up from P13. Lewis Hamilton in P18, definitely not the result he wanted for sprint qualifying. He'll be looking to move up through the grid for sure. Only 15 laps because in sprint race because this is such a long lap here at Spa. So Lewis Hamilton won't have a lot of laps to make up some positions, but they'll have plenty of opportunities. There's pace in the Ferrari. The expectation is they're somewhere, the third fastest constructor, fourth fastest constructor in race pace. So definitely will have the ability to make up some positions. Isaac Hadjar P9 just continues to perform really well in the racing builds. Great result for him. I think there's some possibilities, some opportunities ahead of him. If Gasly, if they can't fix the water issue on Gasly's car, Hadjar naturally makes up that position. I think the Racing Bulls has a fast car. Can they get past Ollie Beerman there? Potentially the Williams of Carlos Sainz as well. I think one of the things I'll be really looking at here is degradation and tire degradation. We've got a really interesting tire choice here. The hard is the C1, so it's the hardest compound that Pirelli has in the tire range. And then they jump up, they completely skip the C2. The C2 is what we had last year, actually, is the hard. So this year they have a step harder at the C1. The C3 and the C4 then are your medium and your soft. I would expect everybody's going to be on medium tires. It sounds like they just said, yep, everybody's going to be starting on medium tires for the most part. I expect everybody will be starting on those medium tires. I think the feeling is that The medium tire should be able to go the full 15 laps. If you experience too much degradation, though, you might not be able to go the 15 laps. So that'll be really interesting to see if is anybody going to be suffering from a lot of degradation that's going to be harming their sprint race. Be some good insight into what we might see during the race. I think one of the really interesting things about sprint race weekends nowadays, though, is that because there is open, you're out of parc fermé then after the sprint race. Teams use the sprint races to gather a lot of data, make some tweaks, make some adjustments ahead of then qualifying and then ultimately the race. So I think it makes for a really nice race Sunday, just simply because teams will have a lot of data to be able to optimize their setups so they can maximize, kind of that balance between race trim and quality trim. So it looks like the drivers are in their cars, just getting all the final setups and checks and everything before doing the formation lap. Looks like we got a few people in the stream. Good to see you all. Drop a comment in the chat if you have any questions. Not much going on at the moment because drivers are just getting ready for the sprint race here. So drop a question or a comment you might have in the chat there. And I mean, thinking about, what might happen here, right? I think obviously P1, Piastri, if Max Verstappen from P2 cannot get past Oscar Piastri from the jump, right off from the start, I think Piastri is just going to run away with it. The pace in the McLaren right now is just far too much race pace in that papaya there, and Piastri is far too good of a driver to really not just run away with it. So I expect he will run away with it. Then I expect there'll probably be a bit of a battle between Verstappen and Norris. Again, I think Max is going to do everything, obviously, to hold position with Norris. Norris's best thing would be obviously to jump Verstappen from the start, get a really good race start, and then he'll just be smooth sailing. And I think then the sprint race will kind of be between him and Piastri, Norris and Piastri. Then after that, Leclerc, I think Leclerc, is in a good position. There's a lot of questions though. What is the race trim pace and currently, in that Ferrari? How much pace is there? Seem to be pretty good in single lap pace for a time, and then sometimes struggle a little bit in race trim. Can Leclerc make up some positions and possibly battle Verstappen to try to get up there on the podium, right? I think Ocon, Sainz, Bierman, Gasly, Hadjar, their race is not really with the top guys there. I think their biggest thing is going to be just to try to hold position and hold as many spots as they can until the end of the sprint race there. So it looks like we're getting closer to race time, about 3 minutes before we start the race, the formation lap here. Interesting. Ferrari confirms that the spin which put Lewis Hamilton out of qualifying was not caused by a problem with the car. That's from race fans though, so not entirely true, or not entirely sure if we can trust that. I'd like to probably hear something more definitive maybe from the team on that. Pierre Gasly will not start today's Belgium Grand Prix sprint race from the grid due to suspected water leak. Interesting, okay. So if they can get Gasly together, he'll be starting from the pit lane. Let's see what other news we have. Haven't heard anything other than that one race fans report about Lewis Hamilton's spin there. Honestly, from the moment that I saw it, what it felt like to me is it looked like the rear tires got completely unloaded under heavy braking going into the bus stop chicane there, and that's what caused him to spin. Possibly could have had the brake bias, offset in the wrong position, maybe a little bit too much bias rearward, causing it to spin as well. Honestly, so is Hamilton. I don't think he's making a mistake like that. Could be an issue possibly just with the setup, not optimized setup with the new rear suspension that they have there. Obviously, with a lot of anti-squat on the rear suspension is really great for exit traction out of corners. Not super great under heavy braking because you can get some rear jacking or some rear lift, and that could unload the tires under heavy braking. All right, so it looks like we're ready for the formation lap here. Hopefully everybody can hear me. Hopefully I'm not talking to myself. Can you hear me? Drop a comment in the chat, please. Let me know if you can hear me. I just need confirmation. Okay, so it looks like everybody's on the mediums here. It's just as we expected. Oh, okay, so what we got here, Piastri, new mediums, Norris, new mediums. Looks like Verstappen on used mediums. Excuse me, Leclerc on used mediums, Ocon on used mediums, Sainz, new mediums, Behrman used mediums. Wow, I think Verstappen's going to be a little pressed maybe on slightly used mediums to maybe get those to the end. Let's see if Red Bull has any issues with tire degradation that could cause some problems there. Yeah, it's 5 a.m. here where I'm at, so quite an early morning. What about you? How early is it on your time? Drop a comment there. Let me know what time it is where you're at. On the formation lap now. Gosh, Spa is so beautiful. Incredible. We got great weather for the race today too. For the sprint race. Wow. Okay. So Pierre Gasly out of the sprint race. Is he? Is he coming out? He's still in the pit. Looks like they're saying on the race feed that Pierre Gasly will not be starting the race. Very unfortunate for him. Gasly was in P8. So a really strong result there for Alpine with Gasly in P8 for the sprint race. Hopefully they're able to get it all together. Wow, you can join a race part of the way through a race? That's really interesting. I thought you'd have to start the race. But I guess if you're starting from the pit lane, it doesn't really matter. All right, looks like we're getting towards the end of the formation lap here. Getting ready to line up for the race start. What do you think? Drop a comment in the chat. Who do you think is going to win this sprint race today? Is it going to be Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, maybe Leclerc up from P4 possibly? Everybody's just getting lined up now. Here we go. Ready for the race start. McLarens have had excellent race starts so far. Looks to me like, they've got that dialed in. Verstappen for a while last year was really struggling with race starts. Has had some really strong race starts this season. Verstappen pointed towards Piastri now. McLaren, yeah, as they said, is going to fire those mediums up really quickly. Can Verstappen get his fired up quickly? Here we go. Race start coming. Good start. Piastri ahead. Verstappen and Norris are going to battle in turn one. Okay, looks like Verstappen's going to hold it. All right, everybody pretty much holding position. Piastri already starting to pull away from Verstappen. Predictions for podium. My predictions for podium, I think it's going to be Piastri, Norris, Verstappen. Whoa, Verstappen around the outside of Piastri. Holy smokes. Oh my goodness. Verstappen P1, Piastri P2, Leclerc P3, Norris P4. What has happened? Holy cow. The slipstream on the Kemmel Straight was super strong. Verstappen's got really high top speed. Wow, Verstappen sector one speed 203 miles an hour, 196 miles an hour for Piastri, so definitely a top speed advantage for Verstappen there. Piastri 0.44 behind Verstappen, Leclerc 1.2. Man, what a jump for Leclerc. How did Leclerc get around Norris? Did anybody see that one? Yeah, definitely. I think the McLarens, super strong in sector two. That's really going to be the opportunity for them to stick close. Can they stay close then in sector three to pass Verstappen here? Wow, look at that pass by Verstappen, that slipstream. Oh, and Leclerc, same thing. Late break, got Norris. Got Norris on the brakes. That's how he did it. Okay, I mean, Piastri is sticking to Verstappen here. So just 4/10, a little over 4/10, now 3/10 to Verstappen. I mean, honestly, if that was anybody besides Verstappen, I'd say, the dirty air would be hurting their tires right now. But the McLaren has been so incredible with their tires all season. I really think Piastri is going to be able to stick to Verstappen and still maintain tires. Remember, the McLarens are on new mediums here. Verstappen is on now 4-lap old mediums, so that's a 3-lap delta offset. We got a little over 4/10 now in the delta. What do we have to Leclerc? Leclerc to Piastri 9/10, Norris to Leclerc a little over 6/10. So Norris is sticking with Leclerc here. That was a really excellent move by Leclerc. That was Lecon. I think all the moves happened in Lecon there, right? Lecon. Let me make sure I got all my names right here. All right, we got DRS now. I mean, honestly, this is a hard pass on the Kemmel Straight into Lecon because, through Eau Rouge, the Red Bull has been one of the fastest through Eau Rouge through FP1 and through sprint qualifying as well. So Piastri has to stick close through Eau Rouge to Verstappen to be able to get him on the Camel Straight. Watching the start again. Excellent start, honestly, by Verstappen there. He was right on the rear of Piastri. Good start for Leclerc as well. Right. That's it right there. That's how Verstappen got Piastri. He was able to pretty much stick to him all the way through Rouge, through Raidillon, and then by the time they got to the Camel Straight, he was literally on his back. Excellent pass by Leclerc there. Whoa. So brave on the brakes on the outside through Leclerc. All right, so it looks like we got a little over 5/10. Piastri to Verstappen. Piastri and Verstappen are now dropping Leclerc, and there goes Norris around Leclerc through Leclerc. All right, so now this is a different ball game here. Can Norris now catch up to the back of Piastri? Could they work together somehow to get Verstappen? Honestly, my prediction here was Piastri 1, Norris 2, Verstappen 3. Right now we got Verstappen 1, Piastri 2, Norris 3. A little over 5/10, Piastri to Verstappen. What else do we have going on the grid? So far, Hamilton is P16, Antonelli up to P18. Russell's only made up one position now, P12, Tsunoda at P11. Well, really, Russell hasn't made up any position, right? Because I think Gasly just didn't start the race, so that's how that position has changed. What questions do you have? Drop a comment, drop a question. Any questions? What do you think of the sprint race so far? Not much going on, honestly, so far. We had a couple good passes, right? I think the initial pass by Verstappen on Piastri was an excellent pass there through Leclerc. Piastri and Verstappen just dropping Norris at the moment. Holy smokes. So really our race here is between Piastri and Verstappen at the moment. Right, so Kimi Antonelli just made a move there on Hulkenberg. Nice move by Antonelli. Really disappointing, honestly, sprint qualifying for Kimi Antonelli. Just completely lost it. Where did he lose it at again? Somebody remind me where he lost that at. Was it Stadolo? Whoa. Looks like Piastri dropped the wheel into the gravel there. I mean, even by dropping a wheel, he's still 6/10 behind Verstappen. I mean, Max's top line speed advantage here is really helping him, obviously. But I think the speed that he has there in Sector 3 and the start of Sector 1 into Sector 2 is really helping him to keep Piastri behind him. Tires doing okay for Piastri, he says. Piastri with the DRS open, just able to get just a little bit over 3/10 to Verstappen at the end of the Kemmel Straight, but then through the Kemmel Straight, Verstappen's getting a really good drive out of it. I'm sorry, through Lecombe, Verstappen getting really good drive out of Lecombe there, and just it jumps right back up to a little bit over 5/10. I mean, frankly, if Verstappen can keep Piastri behind him for the entirety of this sprint race after that lap one move, that would be excellent, because that McLaren is a rocket ship. But we also know that clean air is king, honestly. We've seen a lot of races this year where, cars that, maybe aren't as fast as the following car are able to keep the following car behind them because of the clean air. So Verstappen obviously got a lot of clean air here. That is to his advantage. It's going to be helping him with his tires. I mean, 15 laps on a medium, if you look at what Pirelli says the mediums can do on this track, it's right there at the limit of the stint length for the medium. So, right, so Norris now, wow, 1.8 seconds to Piastri. So Norris is not making up a lot of ground to Piastri. 7/10 through Eau Rouge, Piastri has to Verstappen. And now on the Kemmel Straight, he's going to catch that DRS. He'll be able to probably drop it back down again to 4/10, but it's just not making enough of an advantage on Verstappen there. So Norris now to 1.5 seconds behind Piastri. So he is making a little bit of ground very slowly. Let's look at the lap times here. Okay, so Verstappen running a 1:46.0, Piastri running a 1:46.0, Norris running a 1:45.9. So Norris now starting to slightly make a bit of a dent. Lap 5, Norris was a 1:46.3, Verstappen a 1:46.4, and Piastri a 1:46.2. Hamilton complaining about no rear grip. P16. Honestly, not a good sign. I know the rear suspension update not supposed to really, be optimal for a track like Spa, is what Ferrari is saying. So possibly, going to need more data to determine if it's working. But complaining of rear grip already is not good. So Hisham says Red Bull Racing setup seems to be working. Absolutely. I think there were some questions around, the setup. Did they compromise potentially lap race pace for single lap pace? But it seems to be that Max has got plenty of race pace here. Let's look at the last laps. Wow, Verstappen a 1:46.379, Piastri a 1:46.566, Norris a 1:45.9. So Norris is lapping faster than Verstappen and Piastri at the moment. But yeah, I think you're right. I think Verstappen has absolutely got enough race pace here. EUV2 says McLaren pace through 150 to 220 km/h corner seems to be a mystery for other teams. Yeah. Honestly, their medium speed corner performance this year has been excellent. I mean, there's a lot of things that McLaren does that is a mystery to everyone. Nobody can figure out how they can fire up the tires so fast and keep the tires cool during the race. I mean, so there's a lot that's going on with that car that is a complete mystery to many, including me. I tell all my tech friends that anytime I think of what the McLaren is doing, it makes me feel stupid, because I really cannot figure out how they're doing this black magic. So Verstappen to Piastri gap now is 0.62. I mean, you just look through this, through Eau Rouge, Verstappen's going to build the gap again. And by the time they get to the Kimmel Straight, it's probably going to be 7/10 again. I was wrong. Now it's, oh wow, Piastri was able to keep close, so he's going to have a run on Verstappen here. Not enough. Interesting. Okay, so let's look at lap 8 here. Verstappen a 146.394, Piastri a 146.291, Norris a 146 flat. So again, Norris is now catching. He's in DRS range for Piastri, so Norris is in the fight now. Yeah, so EUV2 says Norris putting pressure on Piastri should help Max. Yeah, I think if they start fighting with each other, absolutely. Piastri's now going to have to start battling Norris, and that will help Max. Absolutely, you're right, 100%. So what else do we have going on back here? So Leclerc a distant P4 now. So really, it's just Verstappen, Piastri, and Norris. So we got 6 more laps to go here. 5:20 a.m. for me, a little bit of coffee. Okay, what do we got? So, yeah, we talked about lap 8. So, Piastri making ground on Verstappen now. I mean, honestly, this is where the McLarens are really going to start to make pace on the Red Bull if they can. Is late in the tire stint. That's where they've been excellent, is in their ability to be able to maintain the life of the tires, the performance of the tires, while others experience degradation. They're somehow to maximize the performance out of their tires. So yeah. I mean, Piastri getting down to just a little bit over 3/10 behind Verstappen at the end of the Kimmel Straight into Le Calm. And then Verstappen builds it back to a little bit over 6/10. Piastri now on the gearbox, or Norris now on the gearbox of Piastri. All right, so lap 9, now we've got Verstappen at 146.5, Piastri at 146.435, Norris at 146.1. So I think Norris's times will now start to go down a little bit as he gets in the dirty air of Piastri. But honestly, out of all the cars on the grid right now, the McLaren to me seems to be the least affected by dirty air. I think you also see this on wind affected races where there's just a massive wind and other drivers are really complaining about the wind effects and the instability in the car because of the wind. And the McLaren just doesn't seem to have these issues. So really great bus stop chicane there for Piastri. He's got it under 5/10 now. While Hisham says Max lapping 5/10 faster in sector 2 than the McLarens. Really, that's really interesting. I mean, that, in free practice 1 he's on the back. All right, Piastri is on the back of Verstappen now. I think he's got an opportunity here. He's got DRS. Verstappen takes the in stride into Le Camp, keeps him behind. I think we're going to have an opportunity here for Piastri to pass Verstappen at the end of the straight. Tsunoda's race pace gap to Max is even more baffling than the quality lap. Yeah, let's look at this. Where's Tsunoda at? Tsunoda 147.5, 147.7. Yeah, absolutely. Way off. Over a second per lap off of Verstappen. But how close? What is Tsunoda's gap here? Tsunoda 2 seconds off of Lawson. So honestly, Tsunoda should not be affected by dirty air. They say that anything over 2 seconds to the following car, you don't have really the dirty air effects through the corner and such. All right, so bus stop chicane. McLaren gets excellent drive out of the low speed corner. So that is really the opportunity here, I think, for Piastri is stay close to the bus stop chicane, have a great turn one, stick close to Verstappen through Eau Rouge, and then Camel Straight DRS, take him into Le Camp. I mean, but the RB21 has been excellent through Eau Rouge and Radeon. A little over 6/10. I don't think he's got enough here to pass him with the DRS. Max takes the too far behind, so Max is able to keep him behind through Le Camp. Wow. Relaying information to Lando notes that Oscar Piastri's battery is mid-level. I mean, these guys have absolutely dropped Leclerc here. Leclerc is 4.2 seconds behind Norris. Verstappen, Piastri, and Norris have absolutely dropped everyone else. And Leclerc has dropped Ocon here 4 points. Literally, Leclerc is running his own race here. He's completely by himself. What is George Russell doing? Has he made up any positions? So Russell only up to P12. Russell hasn't even got past Tsunoda. Russell in DRS of Tsunoda, but it doesn't seem like he can pass him. Tsunoda's all by himself. He's 2.5 seconds behind Lawson. It's really interesting. I thought there was more pace in that Mercedes than that. Especially to be able to pass Tsunoda, who's not lapping super fast. All right, so what do we got here? All right, Norris is on the back of Piastri now. He's going to start to put some pressure on Piastri, I think. But honestly, I don't think Piastri is going to let that shake him too much. Piastri's full focus on Verstappen here. Honestly, we're running out of laps for Piastri to make a move here on Verstappen. Last two laps, at lap 11, Piastri was a quarter of a second, 0.25 seconds faster than Max Verstappen. Last lap only marginally closer. Let's look at it. Lap 12, Verstappen a 1:46.42, Piastri a 1:46.53. So yeah, Verstappen is still keeping pace here. I mean, getting back to the comment that Hisham made there about the setup. Excuse me. I think that absolutely. I think they're going to be very happy with this setup that they have here. Obviously, Verstappen complaining a little bit about his braking ability, possibly, so they might need to look into that, see if there's something going on with that. But the degradation doesn't look bad for Red Bull right now. That's the one thing you would be looking at is there any issues with degradation? Because maybe they set the car up for single lap pace, and then the McLarens are able to somehow, pass them because Max's tires are completely falling off. But 15 laps on a medium it's pretty good. I mean, if you look at the stint length that Pirelli produces for the medium, that's kind of at the edge of the mediums. So the tires seem to be holding up. Like I said, clean air is king. Look, clean air is absolutely king. Okay, lap 13 times are coming in. Verstappen 1:46.58, Piastri 1:46.5 maybe, and close 1:46.7. So Piastri made up some time on Verstappen there. So I think what's happening is Piastri is charging up his battery, deploying his battery, recharging up his battery, deploying his battery. Okay, so one more lap to go after this one. Thibaut Courtois waving the flag. Very nice for all my football fans out there. I think the Orange Army is going to go crazy with this result. I'll be honest with you. If Verstappen did not make that pass on lap 1 on Piastri, Piastri's gone, and Norris is now on the back of Verstappen, and they're fighting for P2. I think there's more pace in the McLaren than you're seeing right here, and the only reason that Piastri is on the back of Verstappen right now is just because he's following him, and the dirty air effects and his inability to pass him through sector 2, which I need to look at those sector 2 times, like Hisham was saying, because let's see here. Yeah, you're right, Hisham. Verstappen sector 2, almost 4/10 faster than Piastri. Almost 6/10 faster than Norris. So this is the chance right here. This is the chance for Piastri, obviously. Can he stick with him through Eau Rouge, through Radeon? He's 0.55 behind him. 0.5. He's going to be deploying everything in his battery right now. On the Kimmel straight, DRS plus battery power, battery deployment. No, he's not going to get him. Not going to get him. He's 3/10 behind him. EV2 says, yeah, if McLaren gets to sector 2, it's over for Max. Yeah. I mean, honestly, if the McLarens are ahead of the Red Bull through sector 2, they're gone. I mean, there's more pace in the if you look at the sprint qualifying race telemetry, the amount of speed that Piastri was able to carry through turns 12 through 15 was ridiculous. I think he made like 4/10 on Verstappen just in those corners alone. So yeah, I think we're going to finish the race this way. Verstappen, Piastri, Norris. This is going to be an excellent result for Red Bull. Honestly, I know the Red Bull goes really well here in Spa. Excellent result for Max Verstappen, I should say, because Yuki Tsunoda is P11. Honestly, besides what's going on here at P1, P2, and P3, this has been a relatively boring race. What do you think? That's it. There it is. Max Verstappen wins the race. Oscar Piastri P2, Lando Norris P3. Excellent result for Red Bull. Honestly, they're going to be really happy with that one. To keep the McLarens behind you, that's not an easy task. No easy task. Honestly, Ferrari's going to be baffled. I mean, Charles Leclerc ends up over 8 seconds behind Lando Norris. They're going to be baffled. Lots of work for Ferrari to do here, I think. Lewis Hamilton ends up P15, George Russell P12. Yeah, UV2 saying first post-race radio without Horner. Here it comes. Let's see if Mekis comes on and says anything to Verstappen. No, nothing from Mekis, it sounds. Incredible. Yeah, McLaren says not enough straight line speed to get Verstappen. Absolutely right. Honestly, yeah, it's a good question. What is McLaren going to do now from the sprint race to the race? Are they going to take off a little bit of load, sacrifice some sector 2 speed to be able to improve the sector 1 and sector 3? I think honestly that's what they're going to have to do. There's Mekis. Right. Really weird to hear Laurent Mekis. So Misha says, could they afford to be faster than Red Bull on straight line? Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things they're going to look at now, right? So if you look at FP1, what Red Bull had done is run the super low downforce rear wing and and the super low downforce, brand new front wing that they had. They ended up switching. They switched the front wings to the Silverstone front wing, which is a higher downforce front wing to give Max a little bit more front end. He was complaining about how the front end was lazy through Le Camp, so they added the higher downforce front wing, and they did change. Pierre Wash confirmed that they did change the rear wing as well. So they put on more rear wing, more front wing, excuse me, and ended up being more competitive that way. What choice is McLaren going to make here now? Are they possibly going to take off a little bit of rear wing, maybe going with a lower downforce rear wing, sacrifice some sector 2 speed to be able to now be faster in sector 1 and sector 3? I mean, frankly, we're not even talking about this if Verstappen doesn't get past Piastri on lap 1. I think if that doesn't happen, I think you get a full lap, 2 laps of Piastri getting 5/10 on Verstappen through sector 2, and this isn't even a discussion. It was the fact that Verstappen passed him on lap 1. Great job by Red Bull and Max, absolutely Hisham. Really excellent result for them. Their 75% run chances for tomorrow at race start. Maybe Red Bull will be going for more wing. Possibly. They did put on more wing. So they do have more wing. They're not running the super skinny rear wing anymore. They do have more rear wing now. So, yeah, that's a good point. I think it would be silly for McLaren probably to go to a lower downforce wing with the threat of rain. Same thing with Red Bull. I don't think Red Bull changes anything, honestly, unless, I don't think they change anything. Honestly, I think they're very happy with the setup that they have right now. That was incredibly competitive. Max was lapping 5/10 per lap on sector 2. Yeah, absolutely. Let's look at the times here. On the last lap, Max is sector 2. Yeah, almost 5/10 faster. I mean, it's dirty air, honestly. Through sector 2, that's dirty air. Yeah, you're right, EV2. That's mostly dirty air. Just look at the lap times and the sector times for Verstappen, Piastri, and Norris compared to Leclerc, Ocon. It's like not even a race. I mean, Leclerc sector 1 time is similar to Verstappen, but his sector 2 time is it's over 2 seconds slower than Verstappen. His sector 3 is like almost 4/10 slower than Verstappen as well. Really crazy. So yeah, what questions do you guys have? We've just seen the sprint race. We saw a bunch of updates from teams during this race as well. Ferrari with their rear suspension update they've brought. It's supposed to be targeted. I have a theory on this whole thing with Ferrari. I think the issue is that the Ferrari must be run super low for it to be fast, which is not surprising, honestly, for ground effect cars, especially with interior tunnels. But somehow they're not able to run low because suspension doesn't allow them to run that low without completely destroying their plank. They've got way too much movement, way too much dynamic movement. Comments from Norris right now. Yeah, Norris has got to be disappointed, honestly. Piastri is just on form here in Spa. I mean, that was an excellent qualifying. That qualifying lap was unreal. Hisham asked thoughts on qualifying. I think the only difference in qualifying from what we have from sprint qualifying is that I still think Piastri is going to be P1. I think he's just too good in single lap here. Verstappen is excellent single lap. I just don't think there's the pace, the single lap pace to fight with the McLaren on single lap. So I think Piastri's got to make a mistake. Norris has got to make a mistake for Verstappen to take P1. The gap is just too big. I think what's going to happen is Piastri is going to be 1, Norris is going to put it together, he's going to be P2, and Verstappen will maybe be P3. I think the only thing that might change is, again, Norris and Verstappen possibly switching. I think George Russell is going to be able to put it together for qualifying this time. I think Russell might be a P4 possibly. He'll be fighting Leclerc. So I think Russell's going to be P4, Leclerc P5, and I think on down from there. Piastri frustrating. He was not frustrated. He was not able to get past Max Verstappen, obviously. But I mean, clean air is king, right? We've been talking about this for many, many races. Clean air is absolutely king. You can have a car that's 3-4 tenths a lap slower than the car behind, and the dirty air is going to affect the car behind, and they're not going to be able to pass. Yeah, I think we need to look at that lap 1 pass from Verstappen. He was able to stick super close to Piastri through Eau Rouge, through Raidillon, which put him right on the back, and no DRS assisted, purely a toe off of the back of the McLaren, and he's able to get past it. Now, yes, Verstappen has a straight line advantage to the McLaren. Let's see what Max says now. Drop some comments, some questions. Yeah. Max is right. That's the only real opportunity into turn 5 there on lap 1. That's a happy Verstappen right there. That's a happy Verstappen. Julian Palmer's now asking him about his brakes. He's complaining about the brakes. Yeah, there's been some complaints from the Red Bull drivers about Verstappen, mostly about the brakes this season. I think that Red Bull actually changed their brake disc supplier, right? I think they went to Brembo at the start of the season, and I think they've recently changed. Max unsure about whether or not pole position is possible in qualifying. I'm with you, Max. Honestly, those McLarens are rocket ships. Single lap pace. Those McLarens are rocket ships. They're rocket ships at race pace. The only reason they didn't pass Max there is because they were behind Max in the dirty air. Yeah, really excellent result. So, right, let's get back to the discussions here. So Ferrari with the updated rear suspension ultimately aimed to try to give him a little bit more rear end stability, a little less up and down, with a rear end that allows them to now put the rear in a lower rear ride height window and not go up and down so much. This is hilarious. Thibaut Courtois is so much taller than the race drivers. I mean, Piastri, Norris, and Verstappen are not super short, so this could have been funnier. Hisham asked, do you think Red Bull Racing may change a bit in setup? I don't think so, honestly. I think they're going to be happy with the setup. I think that was an excellent balance that they found on single lap pace with that setup and race trim. I think that was excellent race trim. Wow, what a race. Okay, any other questions anybody has? Drop a question, drop a comment. Let's see what else. Hisham says, I think P2 is possible for Max in quality. Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably the best that Max can hope for. I mean, I think P1 is possible. I think the only real way it's possible is if Max pulls out a Maxter class and absolutely nails it, and Piastri and Norris don't. I think that's their opportunity to, to get in P1 there. But I think P2, maybe P3 is probably more realistic. So if you have, this is going to be such an important qualifying for McLaren, because if you can put the two McLarens P1 and P2, Max is not passing, on lap 1 into P1, right? Obviously. So that was the reason why Max held on to P1, is because he was able to make that pass on lap 1. That's why it's so important for McLaren to front row lock out during the qualifying, the Red Bull, because then you can't make that pass on lap 1. And then now you've maintained one of the McLarens in P1. You've got, maybe then the other McLaren in P2, and they're just off sailing into the distance. So if McLaren is able to front row lock out, I think it's going to be a boring race for everybody else that's not a McLaren fan, because at the end of the day, they're just going to sail off into the distance, and then your race is really just going to be between the two McLarens. If Max is able to split the McLarens again, I think this is the point. I think Max has got another opportunity to possibly keep it in P1, but over a longer race distance, with tire offsets and all these different things, I think this is where the McLaren is able to stretch its legs a little bit. You're going to have a pit stop. Probably Verstappen's tires won't be able to survive as long as Piastri or Norris's tires, and then Verstappen's going to have to pit a little bit earlier, and then they're going to have clean air and be able to maybe extend the gap after that, right? So I think that is going to make a difference in the race. So it may be a moot point, honestly, at the end of the day. But so Aiden says the tire advantage the McLaren has will beat Red Bull 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think that's really where you're going to see it, is in a full length race. You're not going to see it in a sprint race. It's just too short. Clean air is too much here in these cars for it really to make that much of a difference during a short sprint race. Absolutely right. So, but I still think though that it gives them more options, because Red Bull, the Red Bull is strong when it's in clean air. The Red Bull struggles when it's in dirty air. So if the Red Bull is having to run 10, 15 laps on, mediums behind Oscar Piastri, yeah, I mean, Verstappen's tires are going to dig out, and then Norris is able to pass, and then it's just going to be a P1, P2 finish for McLaren. But if Verstappen is able to get ahead of whoever, again, like this, if Verstappen is able to get ahead, then he's able to stretch his legs a little bit, able to maintain his tires a bit, maybe stress the tires of the following car, and then then you don't really know what's going to happen. Then anything could happen during the race. In sense, it says, if it's strong and clean air, would it be better to start on pole or pass Piastri or Norris up to turn? I mean, it's always better to start on pole, although if you look at the Spa, the records for Spa, pole is not the best place to be at Spa. I think statistically, some weird statistic about Spa that is an odd number of race winners do not start from pole in Spa. So, which is very interesting. Maybe it has to do with that toe on the Kemmel Straight on lap 1, possibly. But yeah, I mean, the McLaren's tire advantage is too great, but tomorrow's gonna be wet, right? Possibly 75% chance of rain. I think everybody's saying, has the rain chances changed? I need to look and see if the rain chances have changed. Excuse me. Drop a comment if you know. The rain chances changed. Sky was saying rain is at 75%. Yeah. So, but you never know in Spa, right? I mean, brake boosted. Friend of Dr. Obbs here. This is what happens when you keep chasing lower and lower ride heights. You enter a point where you have to run so stiff to counter instabilities to protect the plank that the car loses all its compliance. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. I mean, that's That is the issue that, okay, hear me out. This is the issue I believe that Red Bull has been having for some time. It's a little different than the issue that Ferrari is having. Red Bull's issue, I truly believe, is the fact that for the longest time, and they're trying to dial this out, is that the aero platform, as you roll, as you twist, as you move, heave, pitch, Red Bull's aero platform is very sensitive to those movements. So what they do is they run the car incredibly stiff. This is why Red Bull has had big issues with riding curves, because you can't ride curves with a stiff car and maintain any sense of balance, because you don't have that sort of ability to absorb those loads as you hit the curves. So Red Bull has been battling this for a long time. So I think Ferrari's probably in that same, issue. So Aiden says, if it does rain, Max could pull a Brazil or a rain masterclass. The only way Red Bull can beat McLaren in a straight fight. Yes, but if you remember Silverstone, this is the thing that blows my mind with McLaren, okay? If you remember Silverstone, they fire up the inters immediately. They get them fast. They get them to temperature very fast. And then when everybody else's inters are completely falling apart because a dry line starting to form, etc., and they're overstressing the inters, their inters are still good. Right? So, so they're doing something crazy there. I think Aiden, your point is right. If it rains and it's like a light rain for the duration of the race, then I think at that point, I think probably that's the best chance for Red Bull, because Max is great in the wet, loves Spa. He might possibly be able to, maintain it. There's been some concerns or questions about the ease of, ability to drive the McLaren. Yes, it's really fast, but then some of the drivers say on single lap pace, or when you're pushing, when you're on the limit, it's not super stable. Maybe that could be an issue, possibly. But I think that's the best chance for Max, is that if it's just a consistent rain, and if he's able to keep his inters cool, keep them alive, then I think at that point, he could do something. Let's see what else everybody is saying. It says, even the RB19 wasn't as good as the MCL39. Engineers must be smoking some magical drug. Or it's just Marshall. It's a great design car, first of all. They've got something that others cannot figure out. I'm not saying that they're cheating or doing anything like that. I think they've got an excellent design. They've got an excellent car. It's engineered to the limit. Certainly Rob Marshall's influence and fingerprints are all over that car for sure. Look, I've talked to people at Red Bull, and I've posted this, so I can say it. I talked to people at Red Bull, and one of the things that people have told me is that when Rob Marshall was at Red Bull, he had some of the craziest ideas that they had ever seen. And some of those ideas, after they talked about it internally, some of those ideas, they said, look, this is too in the gray area. Like, we think this is outside of the regulations, and we think that this is ultimately not going to fly with the FIA. And so they didn't do some of those things. Now, whether or not that is 100% accurate, I can't say, but that's what I was told. And so, is he possibly doing the same thing? Yeah, of course he's doing the same thing at McLaren. And maybe McLaren has a better willingness or more of a tolerance for kind of pushing those limits. And if they are, bravo to them, honestly. Push those limits as much as you can until somebody tells you to go back. I mean, Mini DRS was an idea that he had at Red Bull. Yep. And they didn't do it. So I don't want anybody to say that Mini DRS was not on purpose. It was an idea. That's what I was told. Aiden says, with the stiff aero platform, will that concept travel over to 2026 regs, or will Red Bull change to improve performance? everything's new for 2026. The cars are completely different for 2026. We don't have the Venturi tunnels anymore. So one of the disadvantages of the Venturi tunnel, okay, so here's the thing about the Venturi tunnels. Because you've got such a high contraction ratio, which means the inlet area is so much bigger than the central floor, where you're compressing that air, you're forcing that air through that really small volume. And that's how you're able to accelerate it, reduce the pressure, and get a lot of suction. The advantage of Venturi tunnels is that you can get incredibly high downforce with them. The disadvantage is that they're very sensitive. Okay, the designs are very sensitive to movement, which means that as you move the platforms and such, right, they lose load quickly. And that's what everybody's been optimizing from the start of this regulation set to now, is how do they optimize the aero with the dynamic platforms to be able to give you a consistent performing car. Now in 2026, they're going away from the Venturi tunnels. They're going to a flat-ish floor. And the reason we say flat-ish is because no floor is completely flat. The central plank, the boat, is always going to be lower than the floor. So there will be a throat distance. There will be a floor height distance, which will be different than where the plank is, where the bottom of the floor is. But there will be a slight inlet ratio, very, very slight. Okay, it's not going to be like we have now with the Venturi tunnels. But there's going to be a slight contraction, and then it's going to be flat for the majority of the length of the floor, and then there's a short diffuser. Those are inherently less sensitive. Okay, so I think teams are going to be able to get away with more of this kind of dynamic movement because the floors themselves are going to be less sensitive. So I think everything's going to be completely different for 2026. I think the key element for 2026 is going to be this. You now have to take all of the front tire wake that's coming off your car, and it's getting in-washed into your car. That if you look at the designs, I can probably pull up some pictures and we can talk about this. So if you look at the designs of the 2026 car, what you'll see is that on the outside of the floors, what they're calling kind of the barge board area, you have a large kind of in-washing fence. I can't think of right now what the technical term is in the regulations, but 2026 car render. But you have this large in-washing fence, and this large in-washing fence is essentially working to do exactly that. It's just taking all that front tire wake and it's just pulling it directly into the car, into the floor, into the the undercut of the car. And which team is able to manage that better? Like, who's able to create the most consistently performing floor with in-washing front tire wake? That is going to be who's going to do the best. Okay, I still have all my drawings on this, so let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. Yep, there we are. I can see what you see. Right, so these are my squiggles. Okay, this is the front. Let's go to the side. Okay, yeah. So this fence right here. Yeah, you can see my cursor. Good. So this fence right here, or this barge board, it's split. So you've got like a sort of an in-washing kind of a forward fence right here, straight, and then you've got this large kind of barge board type design. And what this is doing is taking all of this front tire wake. So you've got upper wake, mid wake, lower wake. Mostly the lower wake is what's going to be an issue for your floor, because this lower wake is ultimately getting sucked into your floor. I think I got a top shot here somewhere. Yeah, here we go. Okay, good. Oh, it's called a floorboard. Okay, good. I labeled it. So look at this top shot. Look at the proximity of this floorboard fence to the front tires. All of this inboard front tire wake that's right here, that's literally coming off of the inboard side of this front tire wake, is going into floors. That's a problem. So what teams are going to be trying to do is reduce or suppress that front tire wake as much as possible. So they're going to be using the front wing. So let's go back to the front wing. Forward look. Good. They're going to be using all these vortices off the front wing. Okay, so this is the front wing. So here's your foot plate. Here's kind of your front wing end fence or dive plane type design. You've got your end plate, and then you've got corner vortex. So you see all these vortexes here, all these vortices here. So you've got a counterclockwise rotating vortex here in the corner. You've got an end plate vortex counterclockwise. You've got a dive plane or end fence vortex here counterclockwise. And then also counterclockwise in the foot plate. The thing about co-rotating vortices that are all moving in the same direction is they either stay apart and travel, or they merge. I think there's a possibility these two vortices are going to merge at some point. If this vortex goes inboard of the tire, these two could merge and help to manage or suppress this rear lower tire jet. Why? Because this is a downwashing vortex. Same thing here. This corner vortex is a downwashing vortex, which means all of this tire jet right here that's coming off of this vortex is ultimately going to be downwashing air on top of that tire squirt, and that's going to help to suppress that tire jet. So who can do this the best, I think, is what's going to determine who performs better on the aero side. Now, obviously, it's going to be a power unit dominated regulation set. So, I mean, you can't ignore that. But yeah, I think that's going to be the main element. Right, okay, here you go. So this is a really good simulation that was done by Jack Chilvers on Race Tech. And I believe this simulation was for the 2026 car. Yeah, absolutely. For the 2026 car. So we can see it right here. So this is what you're getting. So this is the inboard tire jet right here. Okay, the inboard tire wake. This is the outboard front tire wake. The inboard tire wake is getting pulled into the floor. That's a problem. Who is going to be able to use? Do we have any of the front wing vortices? We don't. We can see a little bit here. So you see this little line right here? That is that corner vortex, which is just under the wing. That's the rotation from the corner vortex. And you see that rotation from the corner vortex is getting pulled inboard of the tire. If you can use this to downwash air onto this tire jet, you can dissipate this inboard tire jet more. You're not going to eliminate it. You can suppress it, make it not as bad. That could potentially help you, obviously, in not disturbing the performance of your floor by ingesting all of this tire wake. The outboard tire wake from the simulation looks like it stays outboard of this little bar-to-board or fence that we have here. So which means it's going to get pulled into your rear coke. So what kind of little tricks are you able to do possibly around here, around the floor edge? Because in this simulation that they did, you see it's a very basic floor edge. And how much does a regulation allow you to possibly do something on the floor edge here to be able to ultimately keep this outboard front tire wake out of your floor? Because what it's going to want to do is, yes, you have fences. So if you look back here, you have these fences. Okay, these floor edge leading devices right here, you have these fences. And these fences are cambered to push the air outboard, okay, to push the air to the outside of the floor edge, the forward floor edge here. The only issue is that they're not as big as they are in the current regulation set. They don't extend all the way to the floor edge, which means that these are mostly going to be acting like vortex generators. They're going to be spinning up some vortice in the floor, which is going to help you with your downforce in your floor. But I don't think they're going to be generating a ton of forward floor outwash, which means that you're not going to be able to push this this outboard front tire wake outboard more, right? So it is probably going to get pulled inboard. And you see the curvature of it. Well, okay, what do we call this thing? It's called the floorboard. Okay. You see this curvature on this floorboard device? That is an in-washing design. That's why we say it's in-washing arrow. So it is going to in-wash all of that air, which is going to pull all of this weight inboard as well. See if we have any other cool. Yeah, this is the other bit, right? So at the rear of the car, you've got the diffuser. They've got diffuser strakes, diffuser fences are back. So this is going to help to try to kind of horizontally expand the air to improve the performance of the diffusers, but also potentially protect the diffusers from some of the rear tire weight. And why is a rear tire weight a problem? This is why. You've got tons of complex low energy structures which are coming off of the back of the rear tires. If these get into your diffuser, it completely robs the performance of the diffuser. This is your diffuser vortex pair. These are actually good inside of the diffuser because it helps with mixing. It kind of helps to sort of expand the air, which is what you want to your diffuser. But you really don't want these low energy structures. You can see there's a difference in the velocity of the rotation within this diffuser vortex pair. It's a lighter green color. That says that there's more inherent energy essentially in that rotation to help you with mixing and energization. You see how blue all this is? That's super low energy. So you don't want any of that going into your diffuser. It's a problem. So I think that's another element. Who's able to protect their diffusers more or better to allow their floors to perform better. So Hisham says, Max saying in the press that the updates on the car this weekend are very positive. Yeah, I agree. The updates are not huge. Okay, so let's go find some pictures. I posted a picture, didn't I? So what did Red Bull do? Red Bull rolled out a new front wing. They ultimately didn't use that front wing. Okay, so there's that. But let's move this up here. Can you see it if I move it over here? No, you can't. Okay, so I do stop sharing and then share this screen. Okay, so this is one of the big updates that Red Bull had. Okay, so front wing changed. Front wing was kind of a trimmed front wing inboard, right? And I think that was just changing the loading on the front wing to ultimately optimize the efficiency of the front wing, which means that you would have lower drag, but be able to maintain load from the front wing. But Max didn't like it, I don't think. So they switched to the older one. But they did maintain, obviously, these changes. So this is called the junction. Okay, so this is the upper A-arm right here. This is the forward leg of the upper A-arm. This is the back leg or the rear leg of the upper A-arm. This is the lower A-arm. This is the rear leg. This is the fourth leg. Okay, so this is called junction right here. Where these legs interface with the monocoque and the nose, it's called the junction. This junction is very clearly an area where you can make a lot of changes because Red Bull is really changing things in this area. They've now effectively added what's almost like a wing to the junction. I mean, this thing is massive, honestly, when you look at it. This entire distance from where it connects to the nose to ultimately where it's terminated outside is huge. I mean, that's like a dive plane. So what this is doing is, number one, as the air, so you've got also a modified junction right here. This is downwashing. This is upwashing. This is upwashing. This is neutral. It's basically aero neutral on the bottom. So this top leg, forward leg, is downwashing all this air down onto the rear leg. This rear leg is upwashing, which means you're going to generate a ton of pressure on the front side of this thing which is downforce. That is load. And it's directly connected to the structure, which is connected to your tire. So that's like good load. That's really good load. And that load right there, because it's like unsprung load, that load right there is going directly into creating more front end, which is what Max likes. So I think the first thing this thing is doing is generating load. Second thing it's doing is it's now upwashing all this air. So the penalty you pay for something like that is a little bit more drag. Okay, but it's load, and they wouldn't have done it if the downforce doesn't justify it, right? So they're creating all this upwash, and then because you've got a sharp corner here, you see there's a sharp corner here and there's no sharp corner here, right? Which tells me that number one, you're not wanting to generate a vortex here. You're not wanting to shed a vortex. Anytime you've got a big pressure difference, pressure delta, like the pressure on top of this and the pressure on bottom here are different, you're going to have higher pressure under here than you're going to have up here. It's going to be low pressure with this downwashing. You're actually going to generate a little bit of lift from this design. The air is going to want to roll over, it's going to want to roll over from the bottom to the top, which is going to create a vortex. Even if it does create a slight vortex, actually that's a downwashing vortex, so it's going to downwash more air onto this thing. But I don't think that's what they're trying to do. I think they're just trying to turn air, and then I think here they are absolutely trying to create a vortex because you got a sharp corner here. Anytime you've got 90-degree corners and things like that, you're generating vortices. So I think you're shedding some vortices off of here, and I think what those vortices are doing, and it's actually far away from the body. So whether or not these vortices now attach themselves to the body, I don't know. But I think this is ultimately helping to kind of energize this whole area and improve the cooling efficiency, because just downstream of this is where you have the inlets, right? The side pot. So I think these vortices are ultimately helping to energize this whole region and increase the efficiency of the cooling of the car itself. So right, so that's one of the things. The other thing that they had was an update to the engine cover. This was said, side pod inlets as well. They had an update too. They revised the side pod inlets slightly, so yeah, 100% change there to improve the efficiency to kind of go along with all this. And yeah, and they changed the rear corner, which I think was a suspension. I've seen a lot of people saying Merc would be the best because their performance of their old floors pre-2022. I'm not sure I believe that. Actually, I think that Red Bull probably had the best aero in the previous regulation set. I think Mercedes had the best power unit. So Aiden says, it is insane to me how such a small change can impact the car so much. My respect for these engineers only keeps growing. 100%. These guys, I mean, I know some of them work tirelessly. No matter, excuse me, no matter what we think or we say, you know, us keyboard warriors or whatever you want to call us, keyboard experts, these guys are on another level. They're just, I ask them questions all the time because they're genius. Hisham says also Max saying that they will be changing a bit the setup to improve, and they have an idea on what to improve, maybe to make it more drivable. That's interesting. Okay, so yeah, they don't have a practice to do it, do they? I think we go straight into qualifying now. So whatever changes they make, they're just going to have to live with. So probably they won't be super aggressive with any changes, and maybe some small tweaks to help with drivability. Yeah, good. Okay, let's see if there's any other news out here. Anybody else saying any other questions or comments? Mr. Polstarian says, can we now agree sprints add nothing and bidding them off is the best thing? Sprint qualifying was boring and so was the sprint race. Wasn't great. I'll agree with that. But I thought that was pretty cool, watching Verstappen ahead and Piastri was pressing, trying to get around him. Couldn't get around him. But no, it was okay. I'm not sure I 100% agree with that take. Aiden says, I mean, the question is, do they do a wet setup and hope for wet? Do they change for the rear wing and front wing so they don't fly off the track like Silverstone? But you remember in Silverstone, they were running that like Monza spec rear wing, and they've already changed from that. So they already have a higher load rear wing already. So the question is going to be whether or not, and they'll have all the data now from the sprint race to know how much rear load you're generating from that wing, right? And how maybe the performance of the car has changed with some of the updates that they've rolled out, and whether or not that should make enough of a difference. I think they would add a little more downforce, but also not to impact top speed. Yeah, that was their advantage in this race, was the fact that they had better top speed. That's the only reason he was able to keep Piastri behind when Piastri had DRS, was the fact that he was able to maintain top speed on the Kemmel Straight. So some might say McLaren has to shed some drag to win tomorrow, but it's almost certainly going to be wet, and if Red Bull keeps the current rear wing, McLaren should win this. Maybe. I mean, so here's the thing, okay, about rain. Yes, you can pile on a ton of rear wing, and probably that's the best way to get rear load in rain, because of the fact that the floors generate downforce the faster you go. And the faster you go, the more the cars suck themselves down to the ground, the lower the ride height gets, and the more downforce you generate. So you see these things are related. So when you're running in a wet race, the average speed is much lower, which means that you can't generate as much downforce from the floors. So sometimes you have to offset that by having more rear wing. So maybe that's why, teams will choose potentially to do that. But remember, qualifying is today. And then you're in Parc Fermé. So if you qualified today and you put a barn door rear wing anticipating that it's going to be wet tomorrow, you're not going to qualify anywhere today in a dry race. And all the teams like Haas, Williams, Alpine, all these guys are going to be putting on skinny rear wings because they want to maximize their qualifying position. And they may fly off the track tomorrow if it's a wet race, but it may not be a wet race too, right? 75% chance. Spa, that part of the world is extremely variable when it comes to the weather. Even if Max had the advantage on the straights, and McLaren's tires are just way too bulletproof. I mean, you're not wrong. That's where the McLarens are going to be able to extend their advantage in the race, is the fact that they have better tire degradation than everybody else. Absolutely. Doc, what's your expectations of Red Bull in Budapest? I know it's early to say, but what's your expectations of the track? The track does not suit this car. No. Tracks like Spa suit this car. Now, if you look at the performance on corner type, excuse me, low speed, medium speed, high speed, Red Bull is head and shoulders above everyone in high speed corner performance. So the tracks that have the more high speed corners is where Red Bull is going to be best. Medium speed performance, McLaren is head and shoulders above everybody else. So McLaren is going to be, obviously strong any place that's medium speed. Low speed, McLaren's very strong too. Ferrari's, I think, strong in low speed, if I seem to remember the data right. And so is I think Mercedes as well. I could be messing that all up. But Hisham says, Sky just saying Yuki will use the new floor and updates for quality. Good. Why weren't they on there for sprint qualifying then? If they're at the race. That's weird. I like Yuki. Honestly, I think Yuki's a good driver. I think Yuki has changed. He's not you don't hear a lot of the hot-headed kind of crazy comments from Yuki anymore. I think Yuki's an excellent driver. Yeah, the car is hard to drive. It's very much on the nose. It's hard for anyone to drive, But you know, Yuki, I think, can get there for sure. It is sad to see his performance right now. He's a good driver. I hope his performance gets better. Absolutely. Yuki's a good person too, honestly. Yuki's cool. Laurent Becky's 100% win ratio is a Red Bull team principle. Absolutely right. Charles Leclerc, what's he saying? The upgrade worked, but McLaren also brought upgrades, so we're not closing the gap. It's positive that the upgrade did work on our side, but we need more to try to catch up with McLaren's. Yeah, that's the issue. That's the issue with racing, is that you can roll out an update, but if somebody else rolls out an update that's better than yours, you didn't close the gap. And the distance to McLaren right now is too far. Okay, these guys are way too fast. I think the only place where the McLarens are going to get challenged is on the high-speed tracks, the high-speed corner tracks, and they're going to get challenged by the Red Bull and Max Verstappen, I should say. Everywhere else, honestly, is going to be McLaren just dominating. I think Budapest is going to be a McLaren domination, unfortunately. Okay. Props to McLaren. If there's any McLaren's fans in the chat, no offense. Props to McLaren. They've done an excellent job. But I think they're going to run away with it. And look, I know what this is like. I'm a Red Bull fan from 2023. When that Red Bull runs away with it, honestly, those races were boring for me too. Let me drop a comment on my. Let's share this so we can see if we can get more people in here. Maybe if people have questions. Yeah, drop some more questions you might have. Let's see if we can pull. People in here. Yeah, so the McLarens are just too strong. Low speed, medium speed tracks compared to everyone else. They just dominate. And especially super high degradation tracks. So I had somebody tell me something very interesting the other day. They said that the Mercedes are really good on tracks where there's low grip and you know, other people experience degradation because there's low grip. So Mercedes is really good on low grip tracks. Canada, great example of that, right? And lower average speed, low grip. Spa is not that. So I think Mercedes will be looking to try to obviously optimize their qualifying performance now better than they had during sprint qualifying. George Russell not happy with P13, obviously, more Kimi Antonelli at P18. But you know, maybe P4, P5 is more realistic for them. And then, but then in the race, are they going to be able to keep pace? I don't think so. So I think this is a Max Verstappen RB21 and McLaren track. So I think the race is probably going to be seen maybe as a little bit boring unless we have some chaos, some accidents. Lots of curbs and bumps that doesn't suit the RB21 in Hungary. Absolutely. But honestly, they've improved that. If you look at Canada, Canada was an Achilles heel for the RB20. Even the RB19 had problems in Canada. So not a lot of high-speed corners. You know, issues with curb riding and things like that in Canada. They were honestly pretty strong in Canada this year, and they've been looking to try to address those issues with curb riding. And I think they've improved it. It's not great, but it's better than it used to be for sure. Somebody just QT'd my Laurent Neckies. Said, in Laurent we trust. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, let's talk about Laurent Neckies. Okay.
My post, my comment was about that was the cleanest Friday that Red Bull has had in a long time. And if you are a Red Bull fan, then you know that Fridays have been a nightmare for even in 2024, even in 2023, when the car was super dominant. Friday was a night. If you recall Zandvoort, it was a nightmare. The car was nowhere on Friday. But they pulled some kind of crazy magic from Friday to Saturday. They changed the setup. Max Verstappen is all of a sudden happy, and they're able to do well in qualifying. And that was a clean Friday for Red Bull in Spa. I mean, the car's performance out of the box was really good. They had to make some tweaks. Now, obviously, they changed kind of the downforce level, right, from FP1 to sprint qualifying, because they were killing everybody in Sector 1 and Sector 2 and absolutely donking it in Sectors. Sorry, Sector 1 and Sector 3, and just donking it in Sector 2. It was terrible. EUV2 says it feels like Red Bull Racing have iterated less on the suspension compared to other rivals. Yeah, but you have to be careful about the upgrade tables because the upgrade tables will label an update to like an aero update to a suspension shroud as a suspension update. And it's not a suspension update, right? But I think what you're saying is iteration with respect to like suspension geometries. Yes. Red Bull has not done as much. Now, you can make an update to your suspension geometry and not have to report it as part of the update table because it is not a wetted part, which means that it doesn't have air passing over it, so it's not like an aero part. Those are the only things that had to be reported. Now, I did hear that they made some changes to the rear suspension to address the curb riding like we are talking about at the beginning of this season. Towards the first half of the season, they did make some changes. So I think they have made some changes to the rear suspension. I think they're minor tweaks to the rear suspension, but yeah, I mean, no major geometrical changes or anything. That's the thing. That is super risky. It is super. What Ferrari have done to change the geometry of their rear suspension in such a way to go so high anti-squat is incredibly risky because it takes time to dial all that in, because we're not only talking about dialing in the dynamic performance of the car, which means how much the car is moving, but we're also talking about dialing in the aero to work with that dynamic movement, because these floors are so sensitive to all that motion that now you have to optimize your aero to match. And how long is that going to take? Yeah, Hisham saying he agrees. It's been a fantastic Friday. And the rumor, not the rumor, because this is a reported story, but the reported story is that Laurent Mekies went in, worked with the team to optimize basically the performance simulator that they have in between sessions that ultimately determines the race setup. That's how the simulator works. They put the drivers on the simulator, they run the simulator, they do all different kinds of setup changes, and they try and say, okay, this is how we're locking in the setup for the race. That's your day one FP1 setup. It comes from the simulator runs. He made some changes with how they do that to optimize that whole thing, that whole process. And ultimately, we got a better setup from the start, which has been a problem for Red Bull for a while. EV2 Wash was doubting MCL's extreme anti-dive front suspension, but somehow they made it work. Magic. These guys are excellent. That is an extreme anti-dive. I agree. Red Bull has a strong anti-dive front, but McLaren has even more. Absolutely right. Hisham says in Canada, the curb riding was better compared to last year. Yep. And that's the thing. That's what I had heard is that they would made some tweaks and changes to the rear suspension to address the curb riding issue, to improve that. So I think they have. DM says, hello, Dr. Obbs. I didn't know you had a YouTube. Yes, I do. Hello. This is my YouTube. Yeah, guys, I'm going to try to do more YouTube videos, more explainer videos and things like that. Look, if you have any questions about the 2026 car and things, doing well, Liam. Hope you're doing well as well. It's really early here. It's like 6:30 in the morning. I've had my coffee. My whole family's asleep. Right. So if you have any questions about anything, I've got lots of content and stuff here I can share on the screen. We can walk through some of that stuff. Aiden says, thank you for all your technical insight. I'm going into my last year of European high school. I'm looking to going to university for engineering, maybe to go into defense, space, and motorsport. Awesome. Best of luck to you. Look, I'll talk a little bit about my background. Obviously, I'm an engineer. I have my bachelor's, master's, and PhD all in mechanical engineering. But once you get to your master's and PhD, you start to kind of specialize in areas. I chose fluid dynamics, aerodynamics, and so that's what I've specialized in. I don't work in motorsport. I work actually in the energy industry, but I always just maintained that passion for motorsport ever since I was a kid. When I was in college, by the way, Aiden was saying it. So Aiden, if there's ever an opportunity for you if you want to get into motorsport, the best thing you can do is get on the Formula SAE teams or the Formula teams. So basically, a lot of universities, find a university if you're interested in this that has a Formula team. And what they do is they build like little mini race cars, Formula cars. They usually have like motorcycle engines in them. And you design this thing from scratch. Now, I was on my Formula team when I was in the undergrad. I was actually on the suspension team. I know where my post says I'm not a suspension expert. I'm not a suspension expert, but I know enough to be dangerous. And I actually designed the whole front upright hub for the car. So I understand a bit about load pass and things like that in race cars. But yeah, I was on the Formula team. I had every intention of going and working in motorsport. I actually wanted to work for like Ford's special vehicle team. Yeah, when I was in grad school, I got an internship with an energy industry company and loved it. And the money was really good. So I followed that. But I always wondered what could have happened if I'd gone into motorsports. But best of luck to you, Aiden. Yeah, if you want to go into motorsports, and anybody else in the chat, if you want to get into motorsports, the best thing you can do is get practical, real, hands-on experience. And honestly, that goes for anything that you want to do. If you want to be an engineer, hands-on experience is the best thing that you can get, because that shows people that you're not only smart, like kind of textbook smart, right? But you've also got skills to do things, right? And especially in motorsports, that's what they need. EV2 says, in Imola, the RB21 is very good in medium speed corners, but that hasn't carried over. Yeah, I think everybody else has just gotten better, honestly, in medium speed corners. I think maybe that's the difference. Liam asked, do you think the 2026 cars will be like the 2022 and gradually make up the deficit? They said it's going to be like 4 to 5 seconds off current cars. Yeah, so Liam, I know you just joined. We were talking a little bit about the 2026 cars before, but yes, I have heard from people, can't say who, I have heard from people who would know that the cars will be, based on simulations they're running, performance simulations they're running, 3 to 4 seconds a lap slower. Obviously, depends on the track, right? But 3 to 4 seconds slower than the current cars, which is really depressing. Speaking of suspension, looking at the sprint, do you think Ferrari updates have essentially made the car worse because the way they changed the anti-squat seems to have made the car worse? Yeah. I commented about this. I think that it looks like Airbus Aviation has questions around Ferrari cars at first now set up. Yeah. Okay, so I was mentioning this before. Anytime you change your rear suspension like that, the geometry of the upper, lower A arms, etc., all of that, that is incredibly difficult to get right immediately. It's going to take time to dial that whole thing in. Now, it's not only dialing in the dynamic movement of the car, but also, like I said before, marrying up the aero platform with that dynamic movement. Because remember, your whole rear portion of your floor, your diffuser and everything, is all optimally working with ride height. The lower you get, the more downforce you generate from these floors, especially from the kick line of the diffuser. That's where you get a massive suction peak. And if you cannot optimize that movement to keep it in the window, then you're going to have problems. You're going to have mid-corner instability. You're going to have corner entry instability because you've got rear lifting under heavy braking. Yeah, all that stuff is going to be incredibly difficult to get right. It's going to take Ferrari time to dial that in. I was surprised when Lewis Hamilton said he made the comments about the filming day and they didn't really do testing, because all the reports were they were going to go through some kind of a test program during the filming day to dial the system in, to gather data. Okay, you never really know what you're going to get from Italian media, right? Whether or not it's true. But when I saw how aggressive they went on anti-squat, my concern immediately when I saw that was rear jacking, rear lift under heavy braking, because that's the downside. It's the same downside you have with the front suspension when you have massive anti-dive. It's the opposite. It's under heavy acceleration, you get massive amounts of lift from the front, or heave or pitch, right? You get tons of forward pitch, which ultimately unloads your front wing. Maybe it's not such a problem on corner exit to get that much forward pitch, but rear lift under heavy braking is a big problem. So I think it's just going to take, I think that's what happened to Lewis Hamilton, honestly. And unfortunately for Lewis Hamilton, his driving style is that he's a late braker. So he's probably putting in the most brake pressure, late braking, to try to attack the corner, right? And so that, I don't think that jives with his racing style. So he's probably not going to be super happy with that. Hayden said, all the universities around me do Formula race car program, and I'm really close to the UK, so maybe could get an F1 internship between years if Red Bull Racing does a call. Yeah, they do. Red Bull Racing does, and I know they do because, like I said, I know people there, and I know people who have gone through that program as well. They do internships. If you want to get into motorsports, that's the best thing you can do, is get one of these summer placements, they call them, with one of the teams. And it doesn't matter who. Get it with Williams, get it with Alpine, get it with whoever. Get a placement, obviously have good grades, and before you can get a placement, do Formula student. Go to a track, find a track close to you and ask to just like volunteer to sweep the floors or do something. Be around race cars, and that's something you can talk to, and then get that opportunity. And that is how people get into Formula One. They get the summer placements, and then when they get the summer placements, do a good job, you get invited back. Honestly, that's how I got my job in energy industry. Was I was a summer placement, did a good job, and then they asked me that. Hisham says RB21 still suffers from mid-corner understeer with long corners like Barcelona. We suffered from mid-corner understeer massively. Here's my theory on this. Okay, so maybe let me find. While I'm talking, I'm going to try to find my post on this. Okay, so Red Bull has been working on the rear corner of their floor, right? So I think it was Silverstone when they rolled out a new update to the floor edge wing. That floor edge wing update, I believe, was specifically targeted at this problem, Hisham, which was mid-corner instability. Why? If I can get the picture and show it to you, I can explain it a lot better. Blah, 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 going through all my BS posts to try to find this one. Okay, so the big issue with mid-corner is that on medium speed corners, mid-corner, you get a lot of body roll, which means the whole body is leaning over to the side. Okay, found it, sort of. You're getting a lot of body roll. That body roll is ultimately pushing the floor edge closer to the ground. Now, as the air is coming underneath the rear corner to go into the diffuser, you pretty much can't prevent that. Okay, I know people talk about sealing the floor with vortices. It's not a real thing. Yes, people will create vortices to try to discourage the flow from getting into the floor but you're never going to prevent it. So what do people do is that in the rear corner, they design all these floor edge wings and things like that, the rear corner wings, ultimately to aid with, okay, found it. Okay, let me show you, because this is going to be a lot easier to explain when I show you pictures. Okay, good. You can see this now. All right, good. So this is the update that Red Bull made to the floor edge. So what this is doing is in this region, you've got some outwash in this corner right here. Okay, and this outwash is coming towards the floor edge. This floor edge wing is disconnected from the floor edge, which is here. So you're getting some flow underneath this floor edge wing. Again, this is another way to try to discourage a little bit of that inwash to maintain floor edge, floor corner. This is called the rear corner, this area. Floor corner lip and suction in the floor corner. The problem with this is that when you have when you're in mid corner on a medium speed corner, this whole floor edge is getting closer to the ground because the whole body is rolling to the outside of the corner. And when that happens, anything that you're trying to do in this corner and this edge, if it gets too close to the ground, just blows up. Okay. And all this blow up of any of these flow structures that you're trying to create from here, or any of the downforce that you're trying to maintain here, ultimately gets pulled in. And I'll show a simulation that was done a long time ago from a guy named Latios on F1 Technical. And what this shows, so the left side is, this is pressure. Okay, anything that's like purple is like real high suction pressure. This is basically it's like a rotation plot. So what this rotation plot is showing is where you have vortices. Okay, so this first vortice you see here, it's the fence vortex. This is incredibly important in the floor system because you get a lot of downforce that comes from this. It's called vortex-induced suction. And you can see it in the pressure plot, all of the pink and the blue and the purple through here. That is because of the vortex. That vortex has incredibly low pressure core, and that is creating suction, vortex-induced suction. Now, what you're also trying to do is generate some downforce in the diffuser, but also help with mixing and expansion in the diffuser by creating a rotating structure from this rear corner. You see this red line right here that ultimately gets pulled into the diffuser. That's why this rear corner is so important, okay? Because that's what you're doing right here. You're using these geometries to create that structure that, again, you can't avoid that inwash, but you can optimize that inwash for your benefit. And that's what they're doing. So this update, I believe, was especially to address that mid-corner instability under high roll conditions, where now this is a little less sensitive, because what they're doing is they're taking some of this top floor inwash and they're generating that rotating structure from this design rather than any flow that might be coming from the outside in. I mean, you're still getting some inwash from the outside in, but imagine as this floor now gets closer to the ground as it rolls, you're choking off that inwash completely, and all those structures in the diffuser are blowing up, and your diffuser is getting more inefficient, and you're getting instability because you're losing downforce from that. That's what I believe Red Bull is doing with this update, is to specifically address that. I will be interested to see now, we'll talk to some of my friends if if they've addressed this issue, if the car is better in medium speeds and has less medium speed instability. I haven't heard Max Verstappen complain about it, so maybe it's working. Riddle Time says, are you aware that your mic once in a while cracks a bit? Anyhow, what's for the strength? Did my mic crack it? Seriously? I have to improve that for the next stream. Not sure what's cracking. Anyhow, thanks for the stream. Always a pleasure. Your tweets. Thank you. Thanks for the comments. I agree. Did you hear the sound it made during? Seems like gearbox was clanking. Yeah, Liam. I heard the sound. I heard what what's his name? Anthony Davidson said. He thought that it was transmission clash, gear clash. If that had happened, I feel like Ferrari would have come out and said something. they've not come out and said something. Actually, Vasseur has said that Hamilton just braked too hard. I mean, you shouldn't have a problem with braking hard. If you've done any sort of simulator racing or anything like that, trail braking technique. I mean, you pretty much mash the brake going into the corner when your wheels are straight, so you maximize grip in a straight line, and then you trail brake as you start to input and then open the steering wheel. So you shouldn't have problems mashing the brake, which is kind of weird. So maybe this is a setup issue to the extreme anti-squat. Airbus Aviation, is it because of the fundamentally flawed concept? I mean, I want to give all Ferrari engineers the benefit of the doubt that they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing more than me. Look, I don't know. Do you think it's fair when people say that Red Bull's downfall is unprecedented within a regulation cycle and this is the first race with sliding ATR? Good point. I've tried to make that point to people as well. The regulations are written for this reason, to try to ultimately make it to where teams can catch up. And that's what's happening. You have the aerodynamic testing restrictions based off of constructor standings. That's exactly what's happening. And McLaren's experiencing it now. It couldn't affect McLaren's 2026 car as well. All right, so I'm hearing my family is waking up. So probably need to drop off the stream here in a minute. Hisham, in the second sector, the car is not suffering massive mid-corner understeer like before solution, but still not fully solved. I think the updates are ultimately to address this. Yeah, definitely. All right, almost 2 hours at it. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate you jumping on all the questions and everything. This is really fun. I will do it again for the spa race. So make sure and look out for that invite as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.